SpongeBob SquarePants is a series I grew up with. Came out the year I was born. And after 25 years, I still consistently rewatch it. It came out in 1999 and so did I. Well, no. I existed in 1999. I came out about 16 years later. And I have never not watched SpongeBob. I feel like it is the only thing I have been watching pretty much my entire life. There isn't any other show I can think of that I connected with as much as a kid. And, you know, it's a bit strange because that's a sea sponge. I don't have anything in common with a sea sponge. Look at this guy. I mean, I've dyed my hair yellow, so now I'm a little bit closer. We really have nothing in common. That is an underwater sponge. So I was wondering what it is about him that I connected with so much. Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob. SpongeBob is autistic. Okay, that would make sense. I give this video a clear direction so that you understand what I'm trying to do here, and I want to avoid the ADHD goblin taking me so far off track that I start getting into the implications of how Mr. Krabs, a crab, is raising Pearl, a whale, on his own, and how the origins of that storyline must have come about. That's another video for another time, probably. In order to keep me focused, I wrote an essay question. The good news is I don't have to Harvard reference today. Explore whether Bikini Bottom and the SpongeBob universe are a representation of ableist society in the real world, and how do they mirror treatment specifically of the neurodiverse community. I will be accepting applause. Shout out to my editor for that.
I don't know what I meant by that. I'm my own editor.
First thing you need to know is I'm an ADHDer, and I have a whole host of issues. This is just sort of a summary. I kind of hit the jackpot when it came to disabilities, but I'm losing money on this. So I want you to understand that I am also autistic. It's fine. The first question we have to answer, in order to answer the essay question, we have to ask ourselves, is SpongeBob actually autistic? We confidently say he's autistic now just because Tom Kenny says so. Do I love that he called SpongeBob's autism his superpower? No. I am not a huge fan of that. I feel like neurotypical people do that because they think it's a way to make autistic people feel better. But in reality, it's a great excuse to not give us accommodations that we need, hold us to incredibly high standards. It's not a superpower, like, it's a disability. It disables me on a daily basis. I think they say that to make themselves feel more comfortable so that they don't have to sit with the discomfort of the knowledge that you are struggling. I at least prefer him saying it's a superpower over, like, we're all a little bit autistic, or like autism is such a trend these days, or, you know, you don't look autistic. I never know what to take about that one. Tom Kenny also talked about SpongeBob being autistic as early as 2012, and so I have evidence of that as well. It's not the first time that he's mentioned it. Autistic characters are always in the background, or they're extraordinarily brilliant. They're also usually white men. It's not always said explicitly that they're autistic, but, you know, a lot of the autistic people you see in the media and also in real life receiving their diagnoses are guys that look like that. You know, we don't have an awful lot of representation, especially not diverse representation. It's not a wonder that a lot of autistic people find themselves speculating over who is and isn't autistic, because we just want to feel seen. We just want to feel like we exist in the world as much as neurotypical people do. And autism isn't necessarily a bad thing. I like that with my autism, like, my special interests are so cool, and sometimes I can think so far outside the box that suddenly the box becomes a duck wearing boxing gloves that I lovingly name Quack Tyson. I like that part of my autism, that ends up in my video scripts, but, you know, outside of that, sometimes a gender fluid person would just like to eat food. Sometimes I as a person would just like to eat food and would just like to sleep at night. Autistic superheroes could exist, but this would be ridiculous, right? If their disability was the superpower. So I think that you can have, like, a good example would be Detective Monk from the series Monk. He struggles with OCD, and even though this part's not said out loud, he's absolutely autistic. And he is very disabled in his day-to-day life. Even though he's managing to do heroic things because he's working for the police, he's noticing all the little details that they're not noticing because his brain works differently. And you see him save lives and solve crimes and do these things that are actively heroic. But his actual disabilities more than helping him, they get in his way. And what I loved about that show as well, massive spoiler alert, if you want to watch Monk, the series, all the way through, skip this bit. But massive spoiler alert, Monk ends in such a satisfying way for me as a disabled person, because you never see this. It ends with his character finally getting reinstated full-time with the police force after his disabilities and his grief have made him unable to do it for so long. He's spent years chasing it. It's kind of the whole storyline of the show. It gets to like the second last episode and he determines, even though he's just been rehired full-time and he's getting to be a police detective again, it turns out he's too disabled for that shit. And he can't just wake up one morning and stop having a disability. It's one of the biggest gripes I have with autistic characters in television, is that they slowly normalify them to the best of their ability as they go. A massive show example of that is like The Big Bang Theory, where so many of the characters start out as being like quirky or different, but they slowly domesticate them until all of them are in very regular ass situations, even Sheldon. I prefer when people say that autism is like a superpower, as opposed to when people say we're all a little bit autistic, aren't we, and autism is so trendy right now and you don't look autistic. I never know what to take from that. If you know what to take from that or have like a good response from that, please tell me, because all I can think of is, are autistic people ugly? Is that what you're telling me? Or are you telling me that I'm ugly and autistic people are attractive and therefore I don't look autistic? Or is it just something to do with the fact that I don't look like a white boy? I'm white. I was looking up the phrase "we're all a little bit autistic" for this because I was just curious as to what would come up, and this nearly killed me off. For some reason, on the internet, there are a million of these. It says we're all a little nit autistic. It says nit on every single one of them. And they're all quotes from Dustin Hoffman, which is the Rain Man, because that character is, I guess, autistic. But the fucking most hilarious part is spelled correctly or incorrectly. He never said that. It's not there. I don't know. There's so many of these. These are just the ones that fit into the screenshot, but it was a whole Google page of just endless stock photos with an incorrectly spelled quote on them that doesn't even exist. I want to know how. I want to understand, is this AI? Why are they all from quote fancy? It's not very fancy to misspell a word that's only 3 letters. Next time someone says to you, we're all a little bit autistic, please correct them and say, actually, we're all a little nit autistic. It's special interests, sensory issues, and blood sucking. We're just little blood sucking guys. That's just what autism is, guys. I don't know what... Add blood sucking to the DSM-5, please. So in order to do this, I have to diagnose SpongeBob with autism. I recognise that some people are going to find that problematic. I know a lot of people are very against self-diagnosis that we see on the internet and stuff like that. I have a bit of like an in-between take where I think it sort of depends on how much research you're doing, how much of a history you have of struggling with everyday life and stuff. Because I am someone who had to figure out that they were autistic on their own and then go to healthcare providers and proceed with the diagnosis and getting that sorted. And it turned out when I went in to get diagnosed, I had autism and ADHD, and I was like, oh, we were onto something then, weren't we? And you don't just get that diagnosis willy-nilly. They're not going to be like, oh, you saw some internet videos, you're autistic. It's not that. They had to go through my entire childhood, all of my medical information. There was appointment after appointment. It was very long-winded, and I have like an 18-page report on why I'm autistic. I have 18 pages of autism and ADHD. Self-diagnosis can be problematic. Diagnosing other people can be doubly problematic if you're attempting to diagnose someone that you don't even know, who is a real person, who has never openly said anything about being autistic. Maybe leave it alone. You can have a little speculative conversation with your best friend behind closed doors, but like, other than that, really don't be talking about it public. But the thing about SpongeBob is, he is an animated character who the freaking voice of has come out and said is autistic. So I think that this situation, me trying to diagnose him in order to make my point, should be fair. Also, One of my special interests after being diagnosed, as it becomes for a lot of late diagnosed autistic people, was autism and ADHD research. Like, just learning everything I possibly could about it, including the things that didn't necessarily relate to me. So I'm not just talking out of my butt here. I've seen quite a lot of people debating online about whether it's fair to say that SpongeBob is autistic if he wasn't written intentionally to be, but what I would say to that is me and thousands of other autistic people connected with that character, and it's important to us, and if you get to diagnose your favourite characters, I do too. It, again, is an animated sea sponge. I really don't think I'm harming anybody by trying to get myself a little bit of disability representation in Bikini Bottom. So in order to diagnose him, let's take a look at the diagnostic criteria. Okay, we're gonna need to break this down. This is not going to work for my little brain. So me and my ADHD brain sat there for quite a while, and I came up with this: autism bingo. Now, as I've said, I'm an ADHDer. Personally, I think SpongeBob also has ADHD, but I am focused in this video on autism specifically. So, you know, if you want to see an ADHD specific one, let me know, but I will be touching on ADHD here and there at different points. Let me just really quickly break it down for you. We've got social boundaries and struggles, different conversation goals and styles. The reason I've got social boundaries there as well as struggles, most people just have social difficulties or social struggles. But the thing is if you put me in a room with a fellow neurodivergent person, I'm not struggling to socialize. I am a hoot. I am the greatest of times if I am with the right people and adhering to my own social boundaries, which is like linked to burnout, right? Recognizing when you have reached your capacity, recognizing the types of social situations you're comfortable in, stuff like that. If I adhere to my social boundaries, then I socially thrive. It's just that if you put me in a staff room with 10 people I don't really know and all of their lunches smell different and everyone's having a different conversation, yeah, I'm gonna struggle. Trouble maintaining relationships, the bane of my existence. Half the time a relationship ends, I don't even know what happened. Confused by social cues and rules, potentially masking as a result. I've put masking in there. Masking is not necessarily on the DSM-5, at least as far as I remember. Masking as a result of being confused by things like that or having the social struggles. You could put the masking really in any of these, but I've put it here because I feel like it really relates to when we get confused by social cues. We often find ourselves like pretending to understand things because we don't want to be made fun of. Stims, vocal, physical, and suppressed. I'm always stimming by like singing. I'm always stimming by doing sort of small movements. I think a lot of people just associate it with like the big hand flapping or the running around in circles, and there's a lot of different levels to stimming and there's a lot of different types of stimming as well. Special interests. Hyperfixating, info dumping. SpongeBob is the king of special interests. Okay? Special interests are like specific hobbies or topics or just types of things that you find yourself hyperfixated on, which means you're focused on them in a way that is pretty much obsessive. That's where the disabling element comes in. I know everybody has specific interests in things and things that they can be passionate about, but if you're autistic or ADHD, you're more likely to lose time and self-care and maintenance of everyday tasks because you're so consumed by the things that you're doing, which is how it becomes a disabling thing. Needing further explanation and reciprocation. God, I wish there were subtitles in real life. I wish everybody had to provide written instructions for everything. It's crazy to me that you're all out here just raw dogging in on what your ears caught. Strong sense of routine, need for sameness. I feel like that's fairly self-explanatory. Sensory avoidance / sensory seeking. I feel like a lot of autistic people experience both, but there are quite a few people who maybe are more on one extreme than the other. Unusual emotional responses, both directions. SpongeBob is very highly emotional, but the reason I've got both directions on there is because I'm the type of person who, so for example, if I order food and my drink doesn't come with my food, I might genuinely shed tears. I might genuinely be on the floor screaming into a cushion because I cannot regulate myself now. Equally, it has happened before where someone has died and I've been sat there like, why aren't I crying? It's not that the emotions aren't there, but they're just not displayed. Strong sense of justice and doing things correctly. Black and white thinking. Bottom-up processing, details first. I am more likely to notice that you are wearing a different shade of orange lipstick than the fact that you drove in a brand new car that's a totally different brand, totally different style of car. You could roll up in a Ferrari when I've known you to be driving an Audi and I would not notice, but I'm gonna pick up on it, the fact that your fringe is 2 inches shorter. Struggling to maintain everyday tasks. I've been trying for so many years, I cannot seem to figure out how to human. If anyone has the secret instruction booklet, pamphlet, if you have a manual, Patrick. I know it's in your truck, Patrick. So these are the traits that we're going to go through. I'm going to basically go through different episodes, and you're going to see sitting Riley in a minute to do that. We're going to go through different episodes, and we're going to talk about where I found the different traits, and then we're going to go into ableism in Bikini Bottom once I have clarified to you that SpongeBob is in fact autistic. A good episode to look at here is the ripped pants episode. SpongeBob is hanging out with Sandy Cheeks, who he's quite obviously trying to impress. We kind of get the impression that they haven't known each other for very long. Remember, this is very early. I think this is like the second episode. This is very early in the SpongeBob SquarePants cinematic universe. They run into Larry the Lobster. Larry's doing his like whole chauvinistic, I'm strong thing. That's his whole thing. Larry the Lobster is strong. Sandy is also strong. And so Sandy and Larry start bonding over the fact that they can lift things. SpongeBob tries to lift things. He cannot lift things. And it all culminates in him ripping his pants in front of a bunch of people. Now, if this isn't such a real part of the autistic experience, oh my god. You do something and people laugh and you misunderstand them like laughing at you for being laughing with you. Now obviously this is Bikini Bottom, it's Sandy, maybe on some level they're laughing with him. It certainly turns into that for a period of time, but I feel that initial situation is people laughing at him because he should be embarrassed, but he's more excited that he's getting positive attention. And that just to me reads as like a misunderstanding of a social cue. He then continues to misread the social cues because he keeps making the same joke over and over again, and at a certain point people stop finding it funny, they start to find it annoying. Oh my god, I've been there. Where you think what you're doing is something that has been pre-approved. You thought that this was fine. The thing is you don't understand the concept of like doing something too many times, and you're not very good at being able to tell the difference between somebody like genuinely enjoying something you're doing and then that point of crossover where they start pretending to enjoy it because they feel bad, and then all of a sudden they're mad at you now and you're annoying and you're bad and you did not see the linear progress very clearly. Obviously in a TV show I have an easier time picking up on those things because it's made in a certain way. And eventually we get this moment where he's in the changing room and he's looking at his little notepad, his little list. He misunderstands so badly that he thinks it would still be funny to pretend to die and then rip his pants. That didn't work, and people are now like openly frustrated and annoyed at him, whereas before it was more subtle. So he goes into the changing room and he's looking at his little notepad, and this is the point in the episode where something in my brain goes, see that right there, that is autism. That is ASD, where he's going through his little notepad and he's scoring out all the things, and next to everything he's done so far, including the bits, the moments where people were already getting annoyed with him, he's got like kills, hilarious, they loved it, and then he gets to the bottom and it's pretending to drown. Right, no, because only now is he clocking into the fact that they're over it, and he starts trying to like think really hard of what his next thing can be, and it's so ridiculously funny that he doesn't understand that it just means, hey, we're gonna stop now. No, he thinks there was something specific about pretending to drown that didn't work, and that there's another way he can go about it. So in the ripped pants episode, what did we see? We saw social boundaries and struggles, we saw confusion with social cues and rules, even the need for reciprocation, absolutely. We saw the need for further explanation. That's 4 right out the gate. I mean, I would even say there was like a need for sameness in that he kept making the same joke over and over again. And, you know, bottom-up processing, the fact that he's not seeing the whole picture of people getting angry with him and he's only noticing specific details of the situation. Trouble maintaining relationships, I mean. Next up is the pizza episode. Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza we deliver. It's not just a boulder, it's a rock. Perhaps one of, if not the most iconic episode of SpongeBob ever. It's certainly got, I think, a good chunk of the SpongeBob memes come from this episode specifically. This is a good one for me to state. I believe personally, maybe we make another video in the future, but I believe personally that SpongeBob is actually an ADHD-er, like myself. And I see both in him, and I will elaborate on that here. Squidward, I think, is just autistic. Like, I think he's autistic himself, which is a whole other fun thing, because he experiences his own share of ableism, but at the same time, Squidward is a lot better at standing his ground, standing up for himself, and setting boundaries, something that SpongeBob doesn't really have a great concept of. And because SpongeBob has ADHD, he has a tendency to, like, piss off and annoy Squidward, even though, in some ways, a lot of their struggles come from a similar place, like, internally. It's just that the way it looks on the outside is very different. I also think that Squidward sort of, to me, seems like someone who the judgment of society has changed how he perceives himself and how he goes about life in a way that it didn't for SpongeBob, because SpongeBob is just not capable of masking. It's not something he's really able to do. He tries. There's several episodes where we see him try, but he's never able to, like, long-term mask. I think Squidward is, like, an interesting balance, because he's not always masking, but I think there's an element of that there, and I think sometimes he is resentful of SpongeBob because SpongeBob gets to, like, explore himself and be more openly himself. This episode, I think, is one of those episodes where it becomes, like, quite clear to me that Squidward sees something of himself in SpongeBob, maybe a younger version of himself in SpongeBob, in his tendency to get, like, over emotional about things. Anyways, SpongeBob is, first of all, he's pressured to drive by Squidward. Even though Squidward's the one with the license, Squidward is like, no, you're gonna drive, because Squidward wants to chillax. And at this point, again, it's very early in season 1, so we're assuming that Squidward at this point does not have the knowledge that SpongeBob is a terrible driver. They get in the car, and Squidward is telling SpongeBob to back up. And SpongeBob gets hyperfixated on that first instruction, and he goes into, like, this echolalia state of mind where he just keeps repeating the phrase backing up. He can't take on another instruction because he's so overwhelmed by the first one, and he just keeps backing up. He keeps backing up. He can't even hear Squidward. He's, like, fully disassociated at this point. Backing up! And he just keeps backing up, and he can't stop until eventually they're nowhere near where they're supposed to be, and they get out of the car, and the car drives away. So now they have to do a very long walk to the customer's house, and SpongeBob goes into a little bit of, like, fun vocal stimming, singing songs, bouncing around. I think he's super, like, understimulated by the walk, and he's overexcited about the concept of delivering the first Krusty Krab pizza. Krusty Krab! Then we also learn about a special interest that SpongeBob has. A lot of his special interests are repetitive throughout the show, but this is a fun example of how you can actually have a sort of short-lived special interest. I know that I have. It's usually something that I, like, do a deep dive and research on, learn a whole bunch of information, and then I never really look at it again. And SpongeBob, I think, has a similar thing here, because he has a particular interest in the pioneers, to the point that he's learned a bunch of random knowledge about the pioneers that has nothing to do with anything, but he mentions it on the walk, and Squidward is like, okay. And it's also part of, like, the bottom-up processing, I think, we also see here, because SpongeBob notices things that Squidward doesn't, and picks up on things that other people don't. His special interests ends up being the thing that saves their asses. He ends up seeing a rock, and the famous quote, "It's not just a boulder, it's a rock." Because it is. And he knows that the pioneers used to ride these babies for miles. And Squidward doesn't believe him initially, obviously, because it's a rock. Eventually, they get on it, and SpongeBob shows him that, in fact, the pioneers did used to ride these, and they are rideable, and here goes the rock. Beautiful, beautiful moment. It really sets up the universe of Bikini Bottom. Anything's possible, but also people still get injured. It's very complicated. And yet here I am, psychoanalyzing the SpongeBob SquarePants universe. His intense rule following, his strong sense of justice, his black and white thinking makes him believe that even when they are starving, even when they are thirsty, even when they are lost, that they must deliver this pizza, because he must finish what he started. I cannot tell you how many times I have been dying of thirst, super hungry. Well, let's not say dying of thirst, that's a bit dramatic, but, like, incredibly thirsty, incredibly hungry, needs to pee, needs to sleep, needing to do anything to take care of any of my well-being as a human person, and be completely unable to stop what I'm doing until I finish it. I cannot chill. There is no breathing here. There is only sewing this random t-shirt for the doll that I'm sewing a t-shirt for, and I cannot stop until the last stitch because I'm just so close to done, because I'm also, my time blindness, I'm not very good at estimating how long it's gonna take me to finish this task. And I think that's similar for SpongeBob here. He doesn't realize the severity of the situation at all. And he cannot eat the pizza, he cannot give it to Squidward, because as far as he is concerned, they must complete their mission of giving the pizza to the man. And then, when they are rescued, they get all the way to this man's house. They get all the way to this man's house after everything has gone wrong. SpongeBob has somehow figured it out, he has fixed it, he is there, and then this asshole. Where's my drink? And now listen, maybe he did order a drink, but no he didn't. No he didn't. Because my boy SpongeBob has his notepad there, and he looks at it and checks the order. He says, you didn't order a drink, my guy. This man wants to stand on his hill so badly, he throws the pizza back in SpongeBob's face. And he doesn't even take it. So SpongeBob can't even complete the mission, because SpongeBob then has an overly emotional reaction and he bursts into floods of tears. I don't necessarily burst into floods of tears anymore because a lot of my emotions are repressed, #trauma, but I hate myself for saying that. Do you know what? Actually, I take that back. I redact that statement because that was disgusting. Something that happens when you're in between like a Gen Z and a millennial is just this horrible amalgamation of ugh. But he doesn't get to deliver the pizza. He's literally heartbroken. And Squidward, my love, I've filmed a video before and then put it into my computer and the file is corrupted, or like something won't let me open it, or I will be on the last seconds of like a game on like a level or something that I'm trying to complete, and then my computer crashes or the game freezes, and I'm getting upset just thinking about it. Like if you get home from work and your power is out, and you just wanted to sit down and watch something and eat something, but now you have to call your landlord, and now you're crying because how do I even begin? Squidward sees that pain, he gets it, he's freaking been there. And so he picks up that pizza and he goes and he throws it in that man's face. And yeah, he's pissed at that man, but he goes back and he just tells SpongeBob that it's been delivered so that SpongeBob can be at peace with himself, that the job has been done. The pizza episode, we see a lot of stimming. The pizza episode is stim central. I love it so much because SpongeBob is so understimulated doing the long walk that he's just stimming the whole freaking time. The special interests come into play with the Krusty Krab and how obsessed and fixated he is on doing things right for it. Comes into the black and white thinking, the strong sense of justice, the overly emotional response, even the cute confusion. So I feel like this one we see at least 5 of them in the pizza episode. I bet you're seeing it now. Autism is everywhere. Even in Bikini Bottom. Do you think they have vaccinations underwater? Kelly? I'm so sorry, I don't know a Kelly, I just picked a name. There's a Kelly out there that thinks I am autistic because I have the COVID vaccine. Do better, Kelly. Now let's talk about the paddleball episode. One of the biggest like special interests that SpongeBob has next to the Krusty Krab and Jellyfish Fields is Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. We see this special interest all of the time. It is very similar to my SpongeBob special interest or my Bratz special interest. These things that just last your whole freaking life in terms of like, I am so emotionally attached to this thing that I will consume anything you put out there. I have played Bratz Flaunt Your Fashion on Xbox. I am 24 years of age when I did that. I'm 25 now, it was only last year. I deadass purchased that game with real fucking money. It was terrible. It was abysmal, it had nothing on the PlayStation 2 games. But I played that shit because Bratz is that important to me. And SpongeBob SquarePants is the same freaking energy with his Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy obsession. If Mermaid Man or Barnacle Boy's name or face is on a thing that ends up in front of his face, he must have it now. And so he gets himself the paddle ball. The official Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy paddle ball. SpongeBob is generally quite specific about his routines. We've seen like a lot of like sets of how he does certain things. We've seen his morning routine. There's a whole episode revolving around his morning routine when he loses his name tag and he has to repeat the same thing over and over again. And the fact that he's able to repeat it exactly as it happened. He usually has like a set way of doing things, but we see his routine get interrupted when he's particularly excited or interested in something. So the paddle ball arrives and he immediately is over the moon. He's so excited to receive it. Do you remember the party he threw where he was just so specific about everything right down to the minute? Once he is reminded that he ever ordered it and has received it, he now can think about nothing else, which is also very, very ADHD of him, that he actually forgets that the package is coming until it's there, and then now that's all he can think about is this. He starts playing it because he sees inside of the thing there's a little leaflet that says, "Take the Dirty Bubble Challenge." Some absurd number that's like this freaking long, and SpongeBob reads this. One, takes it very literally. Usually, if you see like a little thing like that in a kid's toy, that wasn't the literal dirty bubble. And the number's probably not real. And he decides, especially because the dirty bubble is Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's enemy, that he must defeat him. And I kind of get this sense from him that he thinks that he's doing some sort of like justice thing by doing that. He takes it so to heart. He forgets the need to drink, eat, sleep, or pee for 11 days. When I like hyper focus on something and something feels the need to be finished, it's often because I am having like a black and white thinking about the fact that it needs to be done. And so there's a sense of that as well, that SpongeBob thinks that he has to complete this because he's read the paper and he's accepted the challenge and now he's in too deep and there's no way to stop. But SpongeBob becomes so engrossed in the challenge, he loses time. Time blindness, a little bit of ADHD there. Obviously this is an extreme example. Obviously if I were to do that, if I were to stand upright, and it's not just because of my joints or my blood pressure, but like if I were to just stand upright and do the same thing for 10 or so days, I'd probably die. Like I'm not gonna be good. It's not gonna go well. But obviously he's a sponge. It's just that he's an autistic sponge. So when he realizes how much time has passed, he realizes Gary is not around because he hasn't been feeding him.
Huh? I can't find Gary!
And we know SpongeBob loves his snail. Granted, he is an idiot and sometimes he makes mistakes. Like the time he broke his shell. SpongeBob cares about Gary. He doesn't just forget to feed Gary. Like that was a big freaking deal for him. And the guilt eats him alive and he goes hunting. And when he eventually finds him, it's so freaking cute. He sings a song in the episode about it. Now, I know a lot of the characters sing songs, but SpongeBob has a very specific thing about making up songs for, like, specific situations, you know? Like, I feel like a lot of the other characters make songs about, you know, one thing, two things that they're, like, passionate about. Most of Sandy's songs are, like, about Texas, or like Mr. Krabs is usually singing about like money. SpongeBob sings about quite a wide array of things because he gets into a situation and a song is happening now.
Listen now to my musical doodle, trying to stop it is futile.
So, you know, overall for that episode, I really do think that SpongeBob is a victim to his own disability in that episode. It's so real. Like, it's such a real issue, at least for me and my disabilities, is the way that I can get stuck in things and lose track of time and lose almost control physically of myself and my brain. In the paddleball episode, I caught another set of 5 different things. There's special interests, hyperfixating to the nth degree, where he completely loses track of all of his everyday tasks and taking care of himself. You see sensory seeking, because he is doing that repetitive motion. He has an unusual emotional response. Strong sense of justice, just because it's the dirty bubble and it's Mermaid Man's nemesis. He thinks that he has to beat him. The episode that I have randomly selected to talk about is Season 7, Episode 12. Squidward puts on his play at the Krusty Krab because it was rejected by the fancy people. He asked to put it on first. Squidward receives the letter, and he starts to leave the Krusty Krab because he immediately thinks that he's going to be selected. SpongeBob is like, oh, okay, I guess he's going off to do his play now. Squidward comes back as he opens that letter and realizes he hasn't been accepted to do it. SpongeBob doesn't see the change in expression on Squidward's face. He doesn't read it. He doesn't get it. Because autism. And so he thinks that Squidward coming back in that quickly must mean that he just already did it. And that it happened super quickly, and that it's over now, and that Squidward is now a successful playwright. So much so that SpongeBob is like, let's put on the play here at the Krusty Krab because it's now a famous play. And Squidward obviously takes this as an opportunity to be like, well, I mean, yeah, I may as well do it here, and so they proceed to do it. SpongeBob then, while he's doing the play for Squidward, Squidward only tells him to act like himself. I need you to understand something about autism. If you tell me to act like myself, the vagueness of that direction. SpongeBob does his best to act like himself, but he sort of acts like a caricature of himself. He's taken out the trash, and then he gets stuck in his echolalia, and he keeps repeating the same sound, and he's singing a little song, and he's doing a little dance, and he burns the Krabby Patties, which leads to a massive emotional response. He breaks down crying. SpongeBob and Squidward, who are just two neurodivergent people trying to express themselves in this moment, get pelted with the burnt Krabby Patties because everyone in Bikini Bottom is pissed off that the burger people have stopped making burgers for a short window of time. And if I walked into a McDonald's and I saw a worker up on the counter singing a little song, sing your song. Not about to co-sign McDonald's, but I'm just saying, I am not immediately going to be like, serve me now. I'm sure there are plenty of Karens in the real world who would do that, who would be like, serve me now. But just give them a second. At this stage, I picked an episode at random with a generator, which I have footage of, but I'm hoping I haven't lost it. Season 7, episode 12. So in the one that I did not even pick out on purpose, I still caught 4. Emotional response, I caught confusion by social cues, stimming, a strong sense of justice, and that wasn't even a SpongeBob centralized episode, that was a Squidward centralized episode. So in season 2, episode 14, SpongeBob gets upset working at the Chum Bucket because it's not the same kitchen that he's used to working in, and he's also not working for Mr. Krabs, this person that he's very emotionally attached to now. But one of the things he does is he gets Plankton to recreate the Krusty Krab kitchen from scratch exactly. His need for sameness is shown there. He believes any lies that Mr. Krabs or the rest of Bikini Bottom tell him. Patrick is lying to him all the time, and he just goes like, okay, vibes. He never can tell when someone is not telling him the truth. His day at school with Patrick, when we learn that he's obsessively early every single day because he must sit in the same chair to the point that he gets himself there an hour or 2 early in order to sit in the correct place because he cannot stand the concept of walking in one day and not being able to sit in his chair. I cannot stress how real that is. There were days when I went to school that I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Why? School didn't start until 9:05 and I lived a 15-minute walk away. I have no idea. That's just how crazy and intense my anxiety was about doing everything correctly and exactly the same way every time. I used to sometimes put on like 20 to 30% of my uniform. Like I would shower so that I was clean. I would get into clean bedding. I would put on my like tights and my shirt, the stuff that was hard to put on and that was overstimulating to put on, and I would sleep like this. I would sleep like a little freaking vampire in a coffin. I would sleep like that, totally flat, so that it wouldn't get messed up. And then I would wake up in the morning and I would put the remainder of my uniform on so that I did not have to be cold for a single second. I don't know why I thought that it was going to be particularly difficult to put the clothes on in the morning, but it's just something that I did because I needed everything to go well all of the time at school. I was so intense about school. And SpongeBob is the same. His obsession with like good noodle stars and doing everything right and never getting into any trouble. When he loses his name tag and he retraces his steps a million times, he also doesn't think to tell Mr. Krabs that he's lost it. He cannot possibly fathom that. He has to find it first because, again, it's this sense of like he cannot break a rule. He has to follow the rule and he has to find it and he has to go to his uniform inspection, so much so that he forgets the other elements of the uniform inspection. He's so obsessed with finding his name tag that he ends up showing up smelling like garbage, looking like shit, but he has the name tag now. He forgets about all the other elements because he's so fixated on one. Oh my god, it's so real. Bottom up processing, details first, fixate on the detail, forget the big picture. What big picture? There's all of the vocal stimming he does all the time, like the I'm ready, that's autistic. The time he gets fixated on the phrase another day, another nickel, like he has these little moments of echolalia in the show where he hears something and it's like a brain worm and he can't get it out of his head and he has to keep going with it, and it's so autistic. Oh my god. Like sometimes I would hear a line of a TV show or even an advertisement when I was a kid and I would not stop repeating it. It scratched something in my brain that I didn't even know was itchy, and I had to say it enough times that I would get the cadence and the tone exactly correct. Now let's get into some of the bad things that happened to SpongeBob as a result of his disability, and as a result of people in Bikini Bottom having absolutely no sensitivity. Oh my god, the ableism was rampant. So now I want to just sort of really quickly run through some of the other things I haven't mentioned yet about general Bikini Bottom being kind of ableist. Like, just to say it point blank, I feel like it's ridiculous to be sat here discussing whether Bikini Bottom is somewhat ableist. There's nothing I can say that's gonna make it that Bikini Bottom is not kind of ableist. So I'm just gonna kind of run through. The first thing I will say is how constantly SpongeBob gets taken advantage of, because he is gullible and naive and he just kind of assumes everybody has the best intentions, which is something that I have done in the past and that I've known a lot of autistic people that I know to have done in the past. You kind of just blindly believe people all the time. I wasn't very good at picking up on when someone was being sarcastic or mean with me when I was a kid. Mr. Krabs obviously is a huge culprit here. He's constantly lying to SpongeBob. He's constantly tricking him, getting him to do manual labor outside of his job, getting him to like give him more and more and more money. Whilst SpongeBob, because he trusts Mr. Krabs so blindly, he just gives him everything. There's the episode where he forces SpongeBob to catch all of the jellyfish so that he can imprison them, even though SpongeBob directly asked him, got him to promise that he was going to take care of the jellyfish, and SpongeBob just believes him and trusts him because SpongeBob operates on direct communication. If you don't tell him directly, he's not going to pick up on anything. There's also the episode where he gets him to basically be his errand boy when dealing with Mrs. Puff, like that date that he has with Mrs. Puff that SpongeBob practically made happen for him. And then he's constantly screaming at him to go here, do this, buy that, do this. And it's just because, again, he knows that SpongeBob is that malleable person who's gonna, okay, I want this person to like me. See later on that he got bullied by his cousin Blackjack, bully that came to Mrs. Puff's boarding school. Evidence to suggest that SpongeBob has been bullied a lot of his life. And so I think it makes sense that he reaches the point where he just wants to impress all of the time. He just wants to do the best that he possibly can. And if you have ADHD alongside your autism, which I believe that SpongeBob has, the autism makes it difficult for you to understand and adapt within social dynamics because you can't comprehend them the way other people can, because frankly to you they don't make complete sense. But then the ADHD gives you this rejection sensitive dysphoria where you want everybody to like you, and the combination of those two things leads to the perfect person to take advantage of. SpongeBob very much is that person, and Mr. Krabs constantly takes advantage of that. So does Sandy. There are so many examples of times in which it seems like SpongeBob has to be the one to adhere to what Sandy wants to do or what Sandy needs to do. There's times where it indicates to me that she's probably one of his like kindest friends. Like there's a lot of times where she's understanding and she's kind, but even she will laugh at him behind his back frequently, will take advantage of him and get him to do things that she knows he's not going to be comfortable doing for her own benefit. And oftentimes when she does go out of her way to help him when he's upset, it's because of some ulterior motive or because she's part of the reason he's upset in the first place. And so she's not the worst of the bunch, but even she, being one of his kindest friends, often finds herself in a position of, like, using him. I also want to talk about how, in my opinion, Patrick is not a good best friend. I'm so sorry. I love Patrick so much. He is so funny, so silly, goofy, and entertaining. And I also hate him viscerally for so many moments in that show where he is a terrible friend. There are not nearly as many moments of him being a good friend as there are of him being a terrible friend. So there's the episode where SpongeBob has to pretend to be dumb in order to impress Patrick's family, who turn out to not even be his family. But Patrick ends up doubling down, being so horrible to his friend as a result of this whole interaction when he knows his friend is pretending. And this is the thing. There's so many episodes where I feel we see that Patrick is actually smarter than he lets on, and he intentionally does not show those sides of himself very often. I think so that he has an excuse to take advantage of people. And Patrick, I think, may have his own neurodivergency going on, but on top of that, he's kind of selfish, like, all of the time. And SpongeBob is unequivocally selfless. I just think Patrick is one of those people who will not do anything solely for someone else. It's always about him. Even when he's doing something seemingly for SpongeBob, it's because he personally enjoys it and he's getting something out of it, or because he's doing it in a way that then is also more for him than it is for SpongeBob in the first place. There's the time that SpongeBob pays for a Krusty Krab meal and gets a toy SpongeBob paid for. He offers to share it with Patrick. Patrick and his ungrateful ass decides that that toy is his now. Don't even get me started on the freaking Valentine's Day episode. Patrick is a supervillain in that episode. He is horrible to his best friend in that episode. His best friend on Valentine's Day, yeah, doesn't have a physical gift for him yet. But the whole time that SpongeBob is leading up into giving him his physical gift, because he's stalling, because there's an issue that Sandy can't get it there in time, he is taking Patrick to the fair and paying for rides and buying stuff. Would be more than enough of a Valentine's Day gift. I don't know why Patrick feels entitled to more than that, but he does, to the point that then SpongeBob, when he doesn't have the physical gift, he freaks out and he gives Patrick like a hearty handshake. I'm not going to make them feel bad about it, because who cares? I'm going to shake their hand and I'm going to be like, thank you for the day out. The day out was lovely. Because that is a gift. That is a gift, Patrick. Patrick decides, no, do you know what I'm actually going to do now? I'm going to be a menace to society. I'm going to break things and terrify the general population, and then refuse to turn around when everyone is telling me my gift is behind me. I'm going to stand there like an asshole. I get so mad at Patrick for this episode. It's so unfair. Now, I feel like this is one of those things that is absolutely debatable, because there's definitely several episodes where Patrick seems to care deeply about SpongeBob, but there's also just such a long list of examples of where I can't turn a blind eye. The Valentine's Day episode that I talked about earlier, there's the string in the box, the secret box, where he eventually does show it to SpongeBob, because he's gotten SpongeBob to this point where he's been rubbing it in his face, and then he opens it up and lets him see that it's a string. SpongeBob leaves, and it turns out his worst fear is true. Patrick is smarter than he lets on. His worst fear is true, is that Patrick actually is hiding something that's objectively embarrassing for SpongeBob, again, behind his back. It's not evil, but it's kind of mean. It's pretty mean. And there's just so many episodes where Patrick is just mean. He has SpongeBob basically become his housewife when they adopt the clam baby. And Patrick, again, it's so evident to me that he does it on purpose. You can't convince me. I know that he's stupid at times and forgetful at times, absolutely. But you cannot possibly convince me that someone like Patrick, who is cunning enough to pull off the secret string in the secret box, doesn't know that him going to his rock and sitting in front of the TV isn't going to work. He knows that. He's worked at the Krusty Krab before. And so my impression of Patrick is often that he plays dumb so that he can get away with being a bad friend. When we talk about the wider general circle of Bikini Bottom, SpongeBob is the butt of the joke time and time and time again, and people, again, they take advantage of the fact that he's not going to catch on right away. They'll make fun of him without really being willing to directly tell him why, and I feel like that's just really mean. He gets made fun of for loving his grandma. He gets made fun of for, like, enjoying himself or having fun or laughing or being loud and obnoxious, which I'm sure a lot of ADHD and autism people can relate to. When you're experiencing autistic joy, or when you're hyperfixated, or when you're just not really aware that you're speaking loudly, you cross this invisible landmine and everybody is now hating you and you don't know how you got there. And it's just because there's such strict rules for how people expect you to be out in the world and in society. He's constantly perceived as, like, stupid, even though he's a really good worker and is very organized and he's very kind and he's very empathetic and all of these things. But he's perceived of as, like, the class clown, the town fool. I mean, there's the episode where he tells everybody he wants to learn how to fly and everybody makes fun of him. They're like, that's dumb, you're dumb. And he eventually does figure out a way to fly. And instead of anybody being like, wow, SpongeBob, that's really cool, you proved us all wrong, they all just start forcing him to do stuff for them because he can fly, and just work him to the bone until eventually they destroy his invention and he gets badly hurt. He's constantly the butt of the joke, but he never actually catches on to that. I mean, the wig episode makes me crazy because got this wig that just came out of nowhere and he finds it fashionable and fun and stylish and unique and he's wearing it and he's enjoying it. Yeah, you need to wear the hairnet. Yeah, probably clean it. But, like, if it's fun and he enjoys wearing it, there's nothing wrong with that. The entire town bullies him until he gives it up. Even Sandy, who is eventually finally the one that directly tells him, because he walks around town for ages with people making sarcastic comments and he's taking them as compliments because he can't read that they're being sarcastic. He gets completely bullied out of enjoying something, wearing something that he enjoys and something that he likes. I mean, he could have kept it at home and worn it sometimes. Like, no one says that to him. Eventually Sandy is like, no, you need to let it go, actually. You're not allowed to have a fun accessory because it's dumb. And so SpongeBob finally, even at the very last second, he's taking it off his head and letting it go, and he's like, you'll always be cool to me. And that's sad. That's objectively sad, because the very next thing that happens is a band wears the wig and it becomes cool, and literally the very next day everybody in town is wearing it and they think that it's cool now. Where I've maybe liked something that people have thought was cringe and then all of a sudden it's trending and everybody's fine now. And it's just let people be different. There's nothing wrong. I want to say this as well. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being annoyed or tired or over it, whether somebody is disabled or not. It's perfectly okay to turn to an autistic person and say, I'm not in the mood to talk right now. That's fine. If you just directly tell that person. And Squidward does. Now, obviously SpongeBob is him, which is why I think Squidward is probably the person who has every right to be annoyed by SpongeBob. And yet every time shit hits the fan and it gets real, where Squidward is directly responsible for SpongeBob getting significantly hurt, he actually ends up feeling remorseful. He ends up apologizing. He ends up trying to make it right with SpongeBob. I think it's kind of obvious Squidward kind of likes SpongeBob because he makes life more interesting. SpongeBob really cares about him in a way that nobody else does, because Squidward is quite isolated. He doesn't really have like a a best friend. If anything, he has a frenemy in Squilliam. Nobody really checks in on Squidward or takes care of Squidward the way that SpongeBob would. When Squidward ends up without a job, he takes him in and takes care of him. And when Squidward ends up hurt or in danger, SpongeBob will happily rescue him. And it's the same the other way around, I think, more often than people might initially realize, because usually Squidward hates him actively. When he accidentally feeds him the pie bomb, which is a crazy sentence, he spends all day with him and tries to make his last moments as happy as he possibly can because he feels so racked with guilt. Squidward is the only one that actually, like, sees SpongeBob for who he is and cares about him anyway, and he's the only one that's honest with SpongeBob most of the time. Obviously sometimes he's a little sarcastic, but he usually will eventually just say it directly as well. Everybody else is perfectly comfortable lying to someone and deceiving someone that they know full well has difficulty understanding how to differentiate between those things, which to me, I think if you do it a couple times because you're not aware, that's, I guess, understandable. But if it's a constant weaponizing of the fact that you know that that person doesn't understand these things, that to me is ableism. That to me is cruel and mean.
Thank you all for your kind words.
To really hone in on the ableism in the SpongeBob universe, let's zoom into the house party episode. I feel like I mentioned it earlier, but let's take a closer look at it. This one hit me close to home when I first watched it as a kid. It still hits me close to home now. It's probably one of my favorite episodes of SpongeBob. It's just so relatable. This episode, I think, as a child and even today, just made me feel represented. It made me feel seen. It made me feel understood. I know that sometimes the characters are mean because it's entertaining. I want it to be so clear that this video is not me pitching for SpongeBob to have been a different show. No. I think SpongeBob was a perfect show from seasons 1 to, like, I love it. I love SpongeBob so deeply in my soul. So I'm not pitching for it to change. I think these things are good. And again, it's representation that I think people miss as being representation because it wasn't explicitly said at the time that SpongeBob was an autistic person. But watching the house party episode again as well, with the knowledge that I'm autistic and that SpongeBob is also probably autistic, is also interesting. SpongeBob is at the supermarket and he runs into the supermarket clerk who, it's funny because this is also so neurodivergent. Sometimes we make games out of mundane tasks in order to get ourselves to do them. And so SpongeBob has made a game out of getting his groceries. He has to see how quickly he can get his one grocery, buy it, and leave. And he times himself every time, and he keeps a record of the times. Very autistic. He speaks to the clerk, who is immediately annoyed at him. SpongeBob gets fixated, though, because he sees the party kit. And because the clerk wants him to leave, he says, "Go ahead, take it. It's free if you leave immediately." SpongeBob takes the house party kit, and he goes home. And he follows that thing to the letter. And he takes everything so literally. I tried to throw several parties as a kid. Usually they would, like, go well from a surface level perspective. Like if you were to ask one of the attendees or if you were to ask, like, someone outside of me. But I usually felt like crap after the fact. And usually it was a series of stress and misunderstandings and people not doing the things that I wanted to do. I spent an unfortunate amount of time alone because I couldn't bear it, how everything worked and how everybody socialized. And that's not their fault for the most part. There's definitely some times where I look back and I'm like, I didn't have the greatest friends at certain points in certain situations, but that's not across the board. That's not every single situation there. It's also partially me not understanding how overstimulated I got in those situations and not understanding that people aren't going to follow my exact plan. But SpongeBob, he doesn't have that understanding either, and he makes this beautifully detailed plan. There's something about this world around us where people like to stamp out autistic joy and individuality because they find us annoying. I find it annoying how every time I see a human, we have to say, "How are ya?" walking by, and I never know if I am meant to answer fine or ask it back or just say hi back. No clue, but I'm sick of it because the thing is we're gone. We're gone so quickly. I understand if I see someone walking past me and we just say, like, "Oh, hi," we just give like a little nod. I hate it when someone asks me how I am as they are walking. You're gone! You don't care how I am? I'm having the most horrific day. Would you like to discuss it, Howard? And those things are annoying, but I do it anyway. Good, how are ya? And I do it. And I do it because it's how you do things. Now, it might be obviously because we're the minority and we're made to feel like we're the problem and we're the mistake and we're the issue. But it's so frustrating how rarely I feel like neurotypical people have any understanding of neurodivergency and try to meet you halfway. It's not super common. SpongeBob follows the plan your own party kit to the letter. He also misunderstands it. Ain't that some autism? He's desperately trying to follow the directions, but at every turn we see him read one out and then do it in such a way that would not be considered standard or normal. It tells him to invite his closest friends. And so he defines close friend as person I like. Because quite frankly, defining a friend is something a lot of autistic people struggle with. I know that I did. At what point of meeting and interacting with and having a pleasant time with someone you cross over into the territory of that person being considered a friend? I'm not good at that. I'm not very good at that, and I'm not very good at knowing someone is certainly my friend. SpongeBob is the same, and so he invites someone from elementary school because he doesn't know. He doesn't know what a friend is. He doesn't understand. I'm so sure that I have like sent someone an invite to something or like a heartfelt message before where they've received it and they've gone, it's a bit weird, don't really know you that well, and I'm like, soz. Why did I say soz? Again, just really disappointed in myself. He's told to be creative when filling his piñata, and so he uses deviled eggs. He doesn't even wrap them. It tells him unsupervised parties can lead to disaster. He takes that to mean I must plan everything down to the individual minutes, and I must ensure that no one veers off of the schedule or else disaster may ensue. He leaves no room for spontaneity whatsoever, which, I'm gonna be so for real with you, kind of is a vibe for me personally. I would love if I walked into a party and someone gave me conversation starters. Maybe not to the degree that SpongeBob is, but a party where you're like guided through it sounds lovely. He has like a craft corner planned, a jitterbug dance marathon. Sign me up. He gave everyone name tags. Genius! Someday in my adulthood, I'm gonna throw the SpongeBob house party in real life, but with people who are willing to actually do those activities with me. I might not do the deviled egg piñata, but I'm sure I'll still get creative. He expected everyone to show up at exactly 8. He gets like angry at the people who didn't show up at exactly on time, and I relate to that as well. I remember telling people my party that started at 7 and being like stood at the door sweating with like tears in my eyes because I'm expecting all 15 people that I've invited to show up at once. Never happened. In fact, never in my life did I ever have a party where more than like 50% of the people I invited actually arrived. He literally hangs a sign that says, "Have fun. Thank you for the directions. Thank you for telling me what to do. I love it." Clear communication. And he's a little unreasonable for being like, "Let me turn off the music, you're not allowed to dance." However, one of his guests decides to cut and eat cake without the host. The party had been going on for minutes. You can't do that. I know it's not a birthday party, but there's a cake. You can't just 5 minutes into the party. You don't even live here. Where did you get the knife? So I think SpongeBob is based for using that vacuum. I think that tracks for me. Use that Hoover.
Cake will be eaten at 8:52, everyone. 8:52.
And then instead of anybody at the party directly telling SpongeBob, "Hey, you're being a little tense. Let's just dance. Let's just have fun." Because I think that would have worked if they had directly communicated that to him. Instead, they all decide, no, actually, let's ignore SpongeBob's existence to the point that SpongeBob gets locked out and no one notices. This part broke my heart because genuinely, I've been there, but in a different situation, where I get like upset or overstimulated about something that's happening, and I walk into the next room just to kind of like calm myself down. And then I wait a little bit longer and I realize no one has noticed that I'm gone. I have to be gone for a long time. Without the host, Patrick decides to eat everything in the piñata. No smashing it for funsies. Let's just eat it because the host isn't here. SpongeBob at one point manages to get Patrick to open the door and starts running towards it, and Patrick slams the door in his face. He digs his way into his own home, and nobody sees him come out of the ground, and they all stomp him back through the hole. He literally ends up spending the night in prison, and nobody goes looking for him. Nobody is concerned, but SpongeBob is fine because Patrick comes out of the house, and even though his home has been actively destroyed by his friends, all it takes is for Patrick to say that it was a good party, and SpongeBob is like, okay. He didn't get to have any fun at his own party that he threw.
It's in every episode. SpongeBob can't read tone. He can't tell when people are annoyed with him unless they are explicit, and then once he understands it, he will burst into tears because he won't be able to handle it. He rarely communicates his own needs because he's so focused on everybody else. I love seeing representation of the people-pleaser autism as opposed to like the rigid, rule-following, no flexibility whatsoever autism, because that exists, but that only exists if you're the type of child who was raised in a situation where you were allowed to have those types of boundaries, or you end up with one just like with extreme senses of empathy. It can go the entire opposite direction, where now we are completely bending over backwards to make everybody else happy. Have I made my point now? SpongeBob's autistic. Fight me. That is the face of autism. This is the face of autism. Notice how they're two different faces? A lot of autism out there, guys. Bikini Bottom. Patrick. Mr. Krabs. Sandy frickin' cheeks. I go easier on my man Squidward because I feel like he had every right to be frustrated and angry with SpongeBob. He genuinely has his life ruined on a daily basis by that menace. That menace right there. If you don't remember this episode, oh man.
Night.
Equally, Squid is actually a wonderful friend to SpongeBob every now and again. There's the Christmas episode where he goes out of his way to make sure SpongeBob's happy. In the pizza episode where he defends him. This specific episode where when he thinks he's in danger, he literally turns to SpongeBob and he says, I've always sort of liked you. I truly think Squidward stays in the situation he's in because he secretly enjoys SpongeBob's company. He just doesn't want to admit it. Patrick, on the other hand, is a bad friend. This is the face of a bad friend overall. Do you remember this episode? This crap. You want to talk about weaponized incompetence, TikTok? You better bring up the king. Anytime Patrick has a problem, it's now SpongeBob's responsibility to fix it. When SpongeBob has a problem, Patrick rolls up and makes it worse most of the time. These people feel real. It feels based in reality, even though, yeah, they're animated. I mean, SpongeBob, it's part of the frickin' canon. Yeah, I know Patrick's unemployed, but SpongeBob's also underpaid and overworked. And so Patrick comes in, and when SpongeBob buys something, it's not even SpongeBob's. Patrick's gonna decide, you know what, actually, you said we can share, so therefore it's mine now. Do you remember the thing with the chocolate bar? Thought he hadn't ate his chocolate bar and then tried to take SpongeBob's? I'm telling you right now, he did not forget. That was all on purpose. He just wanted SpongeBob's chocolate. He has a villain streak.
Bikini Bottom is, in so many episodes, represented as like Patrick and SpongeBob and Squidward are these anomalies. They do not fit in. The rest of the fish are pretty consistently similar. And that is shown in so many episodes where when a trend goes around, it's the whole town. When they dislike something, it's the whole town. They will, at the drop of a hat, turn into a riot, turn into a mob. They will wound you, they will hurt you, they will beat you up, they will insult you to your core, they will chase you down the street.
Puts people to sleep!
Noxious gas?
No! Your act!
Just because you're not exactly how they want you to be. And that, to me, is actually great representation of what it feels like to be an autistic person living in like a small town.
Over on the right side all by itself. Or
I think it goes stuck inside your...
wait,
We're on the outside looking in, and what we're looking at, we can't really make complete sense of. This is the crux of why I want to make this video, because I recognize and understand that overall this is ridiculous. I'm talking about an animated cartoon, and it's a stupid cartoon, and a lot of episodes don't make any sense, and it's not linear. I mean, I've made mentions about this being canon and that being canon. Realistically, there's not much that's canon in SpongeBob because it's not linear, and because often it almost like resets at the beginning of every episode. But there are things that are established that are consistent, and to me that is still canon, and there are storylines that actually do get picked back up and progress. It's just that there's usually gaps. The show's gone on so long now. There are loads of plot holes and continuity things where they've sort of tossed that out the window. So to me, it's like season 1 to 10 is the show, and then everything that comes after that is sort of a spin-off of the show. From a really young age all the way through to my mid-20s, I clung to SpongeBob. There were other comforts and other things that I felt connected to, other things that would help me, but like, if there was one thing that really made me feel like it was okay to be as weird as I was, and I don't like even using the word weird because again it just others you, but it's objectively true. I was weird. I was the kind of kid that would go on a school trip in a tutu and like Galaxy leggings when everybody else is wearing the same hoodie from the same brand, and they're laughing behind my back, and I spend the whole day thinking everybody thinks it's cool until the end of the day when it becomes obvious that they hate it and they don't like me. That feeling is something that I truly don't think has ever been truly mirrored back to me anywhere else the way that it was in SpongeBob. That character just, it comforted me in a way that I couldn't even really summarize, and so I made an hour-long video about it. Might be longer than an hour, I don't know. It meant something to me that there was a character that I saw myself in to that degree. There would be these experiences that I would have that felt so isolating. You just felt so alone. It meant so much to me as a kid to be able to see it play out in front of me in a way that was also more comprehensible to me, and that helped me understand myself better. I mean, even in my 20s, when I started to figure out that I might be neurodivergent and I started to do my research and then I got diagnosed, I was watching more SpongeBob than I ever have before, and I was watching it on loop because it was helping me to be able to put things into words, the parallels between this and my life. And it made it so much easier when I would go into the diagnostic sessions and when I would go in with my therapist to be able to explain what had happened at different points in my life.
Now I know I seem pissed off, but I love this show. And I wouldn't change it for the world. The ableism is what makes it what it is. And the way that it all works with SpongeBob's autism and ADHD, and the fact that Bikini Bottom has so many of the same standards upheld in everyday society in the real world, it provided me comfort to see episodes like the house party episode or the paddleball episode where SpongeBob was getting himself into situations that I got myself into. It was satisfying as hell, and I wouldn't change any of it for the world. I will say, chill out with all the spin-offs and the new episodes because you're kind of ruining the stuff that was canon. You keep doing things that contradict early parts of the story, and I'm not here for that. In conclusion, Bikini Bottom, well, like ableist bottom.